Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm Peter Lavelle. Well, I have an important announcement to make. The person I'm talking to now is Ciara Haley. She is a founding member of the Gaggle. She's just recently come back from vacation, and a lot of you probably know she's my executive producer for Crosstalk. So I've known Ciara for a while now, and she's gotten to know me. Welcome aboard, Ciara. We're looking forward to what you want to do, and tell us exactly what you do want to do and why you want to be part of this channel with me and George.
Thank you very much, Peter, and hello to everyone watching or listening. To put it in summation, let's summarize. Why am I joining yourself and the very talented George on this channel? My goal is to open up conversation, be it from a left-wing standpoint, a right-wing standpoint, a progressive standpoint, or conservative standpoint. I think that's too many bridges are being burned between these two camps, as it may stand now, and I want to start to build them back up and have conversations and discuss important topics that might open up a spectrum of new ideas for people.
The thing that really, one of the reasons that inspired me to get this started is that obviously doing crosstalk for so long now. But my sense is that most people are politically homeless. I think a lot of people are so alienated from the political parties and thus the political process, thus what we understand to be the democratic process. And I think that there's an enormous amount of frustration out there, and that's part of the polarization, because there are true believers on, let's say, both sides. And a lot of them are pretty nasty people, because the last thing they want to do is get involved in is a discussion.
Yes, and this is the whole point, is that there's no tolerance. There's very little tolerance, and it results in stratification, where you have two extremes clashing with one another, making a lot of noise, calling out each other's enemy camps, which for everyday people is completely alienating. No one wants to get involved in a shouting match or a Twitter massacre or whatever it may be, where there is no substance to it. It's just, you do not believe what I believe, therefore you're wrong. And that's it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a high cost of entry to get involved in politics this day. I mean, there's obviously the threat of being canceled, which I think I think even 4 or 5 months ago we wouldn't be saying canceled, but now it's so much part of our discursive reality right now, and that counts people. People are afraid to talk, and this is the time when we need to talk the most.
Exactly. And the thing is, like, people are afraid to talk for exactly the reason that they will be cancelled or humiliated or ashamed. And I think this is a terrible culture to propagate, because ignorance is not something to be ashamed of. If you're ignorant about a topic, you should feel safe enough to reach out, to ask people, to talk to different people with different opinions, so that you can actually learn from the people around you, rather than be called an idiot or whatever else you may be called.
Yeah, this whole white privilege thing. I mean, I think well, if people don't know, Ciara's from Ireland. I have an Irish ancestry, and I'm constantly asking Ciara about Ireland. I mean, for me, it's a very I guess my genetic code knows it, but here I don't know it. I don't, it's something I'm interested in because I know my origins. But I mean, when I think of the Irish, which are European white people, I don't see a whole lot of privilege there. I've seen a lot of oppression against Irish people. I mean, for me, when you have a broader understanding of history, and it gets a lot more complicated. Okay, you could say white people oppressed white people. Okay, but and I'm just using this as an example. I'm not using it as a hobby horse here, but these things, that kind of discourse distorts everything, because it's determinative. That if you look a certain way, you can only have one history, and which is so ahistorical, and it doesn't solve any political problems.
It's also rabbit holing history and looking at things through a single lens, when in actual fact, first of all, if you look at the entire history of the world, yes, like Irish people were, you know, these classic signs, no dogs, no blacks, no Irish, within that order. That used to be a reality. And you can, but this is the thing, you write and read history how you want to interpret it. And that's what has become very popular, is narrative. What narrative are we going to use to further our cause at any one given time?
I mean, but you know, if we look at it in the context of like this presidential election in the United States, and well, I can pick on the Democrats because I like doing that, but I get a lot of joy picking on Republicans too. But I mean, looking at foreign policy, I mean, you have a party that has embraced Black Lives Matter while at the same time embracing an interventionist empire foreign policy that only oppresses people of color around the world. I mean, how is it how can they maintain that balance, you know, Black Lives Matter, and, you know, we have to go out and have regime change against people, against countries that won't get in line. And those people almost without exception are what we would say in America, a minority, a person of color, but they seem to coexist. See, that's the kind of hypocrisy I'm sick of.
But similarly, Trump was elected on his non-war, anti-war stance. It was one of his massive pillars of his campaign. And yet you see a Syrian mess. You see Iran. I mean, he's assassinated a top general. He's been absolutely belligerent on the front of war. And yet he was elected because he was the one that was advocating for withdrawing troops. So it's a machine that you feed into.
Exactly, and that's one thing the most important conclusion of the last 4 years is that, you know, a person can be elected that may have some unorthodox ideas, but once you sit in that chair in the Oval Office, they straighten you out. Okay,
it doesn't matter what side you're on. And it doesn't matter what side you're on or what side you come from. It ends up with the same result, and of course that's the idea with like American exceptionalism and dominance, the US dominance, that they are an exceptional country who will put the rest of the world right.
Yeah, well, or international law is a good thing, but doesn't apply to me.
No, and I mean, like, we can also then apply this to the Assange case, which is ongoing, and we're into day 2 now of the trial. The same thing where you have a man being prosecuted by the US government for crimes he committed while not in that country in question, saying they have a right to extradite him and charge him with espionage when this person is an activist, journalist, and publisher.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
if you're going to take that route, then the First Amendment, I mean, freedom of speech is above all what they should be upholding.
Yeah, well, I mean, with this prosecution, free speech is a dead letter. I mean, the whole Assange case for me it's very painful because you have what we would define as whistleblowers going to him as a publisher and exposing what journalists are supposed to do. So, you know, if journalists had been doing their job, there wouldn't be a need for a Julian Assange or a WikiLeaks, okay? And to add insult to injury, you have journalists first and foremost criticizing Julian Assange, okay? I mean, they've taken the lead. They will abandon someone in their own profession for their own personal advancement because they're only stenographers for power. That's all journalists want today, is they want access to power. And to get access to power, you have to be an advocate of power.
Well, this is also if you're working for the only people who are following this case in depth are independent media outlets, because those corporate media outlets have tied interest with the government. So if you look at any war that's ever been waged, even Vietnam at the start until the very, very end, the press went hand in hand with supporting that war and saying, yes, we need more troops, we need to increase power. And even contrary to people's belief while people were on the streets protesting against it. they continued the narrative of the government because that's what they do. They're tied together intrinsically.
Yeah. You had 3 presidential election cycles in the United States that had an anti-war accent. What's the result been? Okay. And then to highlight the behavior of media, when Trump ordered early in his administration a missile strike against Syria, what did you have? NBC News. Look at those beautiful missiles. I mean, that is one of the most unconscionable moments in television history, where a journalist is supposed to be an anchor, someone that is not supposed to be biased, cheering on the destruction of human life. And I'd like to stress again, against international law.
Yeah, and I mean, again, if you look at what's happened to Assange, which is essentially he's also been proven that he has been tortured by the UN rapporteur on torture, Meltzer. It's literally been proven that he has been tortured. And why is this ongoing? Why is there no outcry on British soil that there is a man being tortured on British soil that we all now know about? Why is this not something that's outrageous and like has caused public outcry? That's what I would like to know.
I mean, but it all happens is because media will not report the story. How can you react to something that you don't know about? I mean, look at all of the main broadsheets and cable stations. As far as I know, they haven't even mentioned the trial. I mean, I obviously don't watch television 24 hours a day, but I haven't seen it.
But for example, there is one journalist, Owen Jones, for The Guardian. He has come out as a defendant, but I mean, not nearly enough. Not nearly enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, everyone, I think you got a taste of what Ciara's going to be bringing to this channel here. I hope you're up and running. I know you have obligations elsewhere, you know what I mean, crosstalk. But welcome to the channel. We look forward to your contribution. I will be very happy to appear with you, and I'm sure George will too. But you have a free reign. This is a place where this is a public space, a public square where ideas can be shared equally among ourselves. Okay. Thank you, Ciara, for being here on the Gaggle. It's yours too. And we'll see you soon. Like, share, and subscribe. And we'll see you soon.